Hi folks, Bob from Fusion here. Today we're going to go over extractors. Some people have been asking about extractor tension. The XP Pro is a standard 70 series style 1911, so you know this top end you do just like any other 1911 when you're adjusting the extractor. So what are things you want to look for? What can hurt an extractor? Well, a lot of times, like if you get a load in the chamber and you slam the slide forward, sometimes you might have a event where you're hitting the back of the rim of the case and it will bend the extractor head in slightly. Then all of a sudden you'll start having feeding issues. Well, you're having feeding issues because now the dynamics of the extractor have changed and it's having a harder time because it's tighter, because it's been crushed into the back of a cartridge. They're having a harder time now with that cartridge getting up and underneath the breech face and extractor. So again, maintenance wise, it's something you can check once in a while. Generally, you don't have to do it a lot. Once it's set up, it's usually pretty good. You want to clean the gun up real well, make sure everything's cleaned out, and that's super important. You know, sometimes the guys will send the guns in here and it's just caked with powder and residue and grease and oils and everything else. And you know, it's like when you have that much debris inside of a gun, it's not being cleaned properly, and you're gonna have some issues when you got so much gunk in there. So here we have an XP slide. What did I do? Obviously, make sure it's unloaded. Next, you're gonna end up removing just basic field stripping, getting the barrel out, getting the guide rod out, and that. And then next thing you're going to do, I usually use a roll of tape, or a bench block is fine too. What tools are you going to need? Well, maybe a punch, a hammer, you know, maybe a small square file. You know, that comes in handy. Maybe a little sandpaper if you got access to a buffing wheel, that helps a little bit. But what you're going to do here is you're going to just push in on the firing pin. Okay, so sometimes you can just put a punch in there, push down on the firing pin, and get the firing pin stop plate down. Other times you might have to just take it and tap it slightly with a hammer and a punch and it'll come out. Another thing you'll notice, I'm cupping my hand like this. Why? The spring is going to come out in the firing pin because it's under tension from the stop plate. So you want to capture that or it's going to go flying across the room on you and you have to go looking for it. So another thing too is if you want, you can take the sight plate off, which will make it even easier to access the stop plate, which, you know, you remove the 2 screws, pop that off, and you can get down into where the stop plate is very easily. So we'll just take this out. There it goes. You'll see the firing pin came out slightly. Remove that. And then the extractor, generally what I do is we will just take a screwdriver, a small screwdriver, I get underneath it and I pull it right out. Now sometimes you might feel it's a little sticky coming out. Okay, all right, that's a little sticky. All right, I see it. So then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to take the screwdriver and push from this side on the breech face and just push out the extractor, just like that. Now you see it popped out a little bit more, and now you can completely take it out. What it's doing, the hook is just capturing the hole on the other side, so then you can pull it right out. And then you can do your tuning, which will show that. So here's the extractor. We need to add a little tension to this, so I'm gonna go up about 1/3 of the way. You don't clamp it hard in the vise. I just put it in here. See, I have a very little bit of tap on here, and I just pull a little bit like that. That's all you got to do. Then you're going to put it back in the gun and do the same routine to check, do I have more tension? Do I need a little bit more? One other item that you can do is bend from the back here slightly, and that will sometimes give you just a little bit lighter pressure. So say you only want to go a very slight bit more for tension. Then you're going to go and do that same thing on this side, facing you, okay, the extractor is facing you, and just do a little pull like that, and then put it in the gun, check your tension again. Now, obviously, if you have too much extractor tension and your case is having a hard time getting underneath the extractor, then you're going to want to put the face facing away from you and bend the opposite direction, like that. And it will bend the extractor this way slightly, changing the dynamics of the pressure on the piece of brass. So And you can see how this one's been nicely polished. I put a little bit of, I just took the square file. So when I file this, people, all I do is I just take it and go over. Yeah, I'm on the top of this vise here. Let's see. I take it and I just file slightly and just clean up the bluing basically that's on there, the black oxide finish or whatever finish you have. Also, which is really important, is after you Cerakote something, make sure you're doing the extractor, the breech face, any feed ramps, because you'll have all types of feeding problems with that, any type of paint product that's on the gun, if you don't tune these parts afterwards. So it's one thing you really want to look at. So you'll see how I just go around that radius, just make sure it's a smooth transition. I make sure it's a smooth transition this way, no burrs or anything that the brass can hang up on. And that's about it. Sometimes it will take, a few tries to get that done. It really just depends on, the tension you're looking for. What do we look for on tension? Well, a few things. It's got to grab, obviously, the case. So I usually use a case to, check extraction. I know there's gauges and all that stuff out there. I just use a case because I've been working with it so long. I just have a feel for it. And at home, nobody wants to purchase a gauge or anything, so it's pretty easy. It's not like you have to do many of these to understand that if it's very hard to get the case up underneath the extractor, you got too much extractor tension. And if you put the case up there and you can basically push it up, there's no friction from the extractor, then you have to add some by bending it slightly. So, and you don't have to bend it very much. It's just a slight little bend, slight little bit of torque. I use a pair of, some people use pliers. I use a vise and I just move it a little bit. And, then when you put it back in, I usually reassemble it without the firing pin and then just the stop plate. And because what happens sometimes as a stop plate rides up into the slot, it'll sometimes be pushing against the extractor, changing the dynamics of the tension a little bit here and there. So some will do it, some won't. So it's just something you want to be aware of. So I usually don't put the firing pin in yet. I continue to put this in the gun. I'll lay it back in here. After I do some tensioning, I usually use my screwdriver again, align the slot with the slot in the extractor and level. And then I'll just take the stop plate and I either use a little hammer, you can use a punch or something, and just tap that in, okay? And when that's done, you can go back and start putting the brass underneath there, and you can feel, yep, nice little snap. A little bit of drag, that's perfect. Now, if you have erratic ejection, okay, 9 times out of 10, it's because you got to add just a little bit of extractor tension on the extractor. And learning how to do basic maintenance, field stripping, cleaning, and extractor tension are good things to understand. Okay folks, so that's the basic principle of tuning a 1911 2011 wide body style extractor. So hope this helps you. You can always call us for technical help in that. So, if you do have difficulties or issues, give us a holler. So, these little basic maintenance steps are important to learn. It'll help you out, as you're tinkering with these pistols. We've got so many people that, just love to build these things and work on them and do all types of things. It's pretty exciting to see what all the people are doing with these XP Pros and that. So, but I hope this helps you, and, we'll have more informational videos coming up, and thanks for joining us.